The autumn fair lights of Millbrook Valley pierced the gathering dusk, their cheerful glow a stark contrast to the eerie silence that had descended over the festivities. Olivia Reed stood frozen at her cotton candy stand, watching as the Ferris wheel ground to an unnatural halt. The screech of its ancient gears died away, leaving only the soft hum of something vast and unknown hovering above the fairground. "Ladies and gentlemen of Millbrook Valley," a voice echoed through the air, its artificial cadence sending chills down Olivia's spine. "Welcome to the game." The fair's lights flickered and died, replaced by harsh white beams from above. They illuminated what looked like floating platforms, each occupied by tall, angular figures whose metallic skin reflected the searchlights. Their heads were elongated and eyeless, yet Olivia could feel them watching, studying, the crowd below. "Mom." Olivia's younger brother James clutched her arm, his voice trembling. At 16, she was only 2 years his senior, but in that moment she felt decades older. "Stay close," she whispered, pulling him behind the cotton candy machine as chaos erupted across the fairground. People ran in every direction, their screams cut short as invisible barriers sparked to life, boxing in the entire festival grounds. Detective Cassandra Walsh was the first to approach the barriers, her service weapon drawn. "This is a restricted area," she called out, her voice steady despite the impossibility before her. "Identify yourselves." The alien figures seemed to ripple with amusement. One stepped forward, its movement liquid smooth. "We are the Game Masters," it announced. "And you are now participants in our latest entertainment venture." Olivia felt her blood run cold. Entertainment? She watched as more figures materialized on the platforms, each carrying what looked like elaborate recording equipment. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a show. "The rules are simple," the first Game Master continued. "Break them, and face elimination. Follow them, and you may survive to the next level. Your performance will be broadcast across the galaxy." Detective Walsh kept her gun trained on the speaker. "And if we refuse to play?" "Refusal is not an option." The Game Master's voice carried an edge of anticipation. "The barriers will remain until the game concludes. Your first rule, no one leaves their assigned zones." As if on cue, lines of light crisscrossed the ground, dividing the fairground into a giant grid. Families were split apart, friends separated by glowing boundaries that hummed with lethal potential. Olivia grabbed James's hand just as a line started to form between them, pulling him to her side of the grid. "Rule 2, the Game Master announced. Each zone will be given specific challenges. Failure to complete these challenges will result in consequences for all participants in that zone." Olivia's mind raced. The cotton candy stand was in Zone 7, according to the glowing number that had appeared beneath her feet. They were trapped with about 20 other people, including old Mr. Peterson from the hardware store and a group of teenagers from her high school. "This isn't real," James muttered, but his grip on Olivia's hand tightened. "It can't be real." But it was. The Game Masters began assigning tasks, their metallic voices echoing across the fairground. Zone 3 had to maintain complete silence for an hour. Zone 12 needed to solve a complex mathematical equation displayed in the air. Zone 7, their zone, had to select one person to compete in what the aliens called a preliminary round. "Choose wisely," the Game Master instructed. "Your representative's performance will determine your zone's starting advantages." The 20 people in Zone 7 looked at each other, fear and uncertainty written across their faces. Detective Walsh, trapped in Zone 4, was arguing with her Game Master, demanding to speak to whoever was in charge. Her words were cut off by a sharp buzz, and she dropped to her knees, gasping. "Defiance will be penalized," the aliens announced collectively. "Choose your representative now, Zone 7. You have 60 seconds. Mr. Peterson stepped forward, his weathered face set with determination. "I'll do it. I'm the oldest here, if something goes wrong." "No," Olivia interrupted, surprising herself. "I'll go." She could feel James trying to hold her back, but something inside her had shifted. These aliens wanted entertainment. Fine. She'd give them a show. An interesting choice, the game master observed as Olivia stepped onto a suddenly materializing platform. Let the preliminary round begin. The platform rose into the air, carrying her toward the alien ships. As she ascended, Olivia caught glimpses of other representatives rising from their zones, some volunteering bravely, others being pushed forward by their frightened companions. The game master's voice followed her up. Your first task is simple, survive the next 5 minutes. The platform stopped moving, hanging suspended 50 feet above the ground. Olivia's heart hammered in her chest as she realized she wasn't alone up here. Other platforms had risen to the same height, each carrying a representative. There were nervous glances, silent tears, and determined faces all around. Begin, the game master announced. The platforms began to move, sliding through the air in complex patterns. Some tilted sharply, forcing their occupants to scramble for balance. Others spun rapidly, testing the limits of human equilibrium. Olivia's platform jerked sideways, nearly sending her tumbling into the void. She dropped to her hands and knees, spreading her weight across the surface. Think, she told herself. This isn't just about survival, it's about entertainment. They want a show. As her platform tilted again, Olivia pushed herself up and began to move with it, turning the desperate struggle for balance into something almost like a dance. She'd taken gymnastics until last year, when money got tight after Dad left. Now those lessons might save her life. Interesting strategy, the game master commented, its voice carrying a note of genuine curiosity. Subject 7-1 shows adaptation. Around her, others were falling. Some platforms had already emptied, their occupants caught by shimmering fields of energy that lowered them safely to the ground. But Olivia knew that safety didn't mean success. Each failure would cost their zone dearly. 4 minutes left. 3. 2. Her muscles burned as she anticipated each movement of the platform, turning potential falls into controlled rolls and slides. She caught glimpses of James below, his face turned up toward her, fists clenched in silent support. Preliminary round concluded, the game master announced as the final second ticked away. 3 successful participants out of 24 zones. Zone 7 gains significant advantages for the next phase. Olivia's platform descended slowly. She stood straight-backed, refusing to show weakness even as her legs trembled with exhaustion. As she stepped off, James rushed to hug her, but the game master wasn't finished. Phase 1 begins now, it declared. Remember, this is entertainment. The more engaging your performance, the better your chances of survival. You have 1 hour to prepare your zones for the first challenge. The aliens withdrew to their floating observation posts, their cameras tracking every movement below. Detective Walsh had recovered and was organizing her zone, her tactical training kicking in. Other zones were devolving into panic or falling into shocked silence. Olivia looked at the people around her in Zone 7. We need to work together, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. They want a show. Let's give them one they won't forget. As the sun set completely, casting Millbrook Valley into darkness broken only by alien lights, Olivia began to plan. The game masters had chosen this town, this fair, these people for their entertainment. But they'd made one crucial mistake, they'd underestimated humanity's greatest talent, turning the impossible into possible. The game was just beginning, and Olivia Reed intended to play it her way. The hour of preparation passed like a fever dream. Olivia watched as her neighbors in Zone 7 transformed their small section of the fairground into something resembling a military camp. Mr. Peterson had surprising knowledge of fortifications, using carnival game stands and food carts to create defensive positions. The teenagers, including a tech-savvy kid named Raj, had managed to salvage working electronics from the abandoned rides. They're watching everything, Raj muttered, dismantling a radio while keeping one eye on the hovering game masters. But look at this. He pointed to a small screen he'd cobbled together from a broken tablet. It showed snippets of what looked like an alien broadcast, their own images being transmitted across the galaxy. "We're trending," he said with bitter humor. #1 entertainment across 3 star systems. A metallic chime cut through the air, silencing all conversation. The game master's voice followed, smooth and terrible. Phase 1 begins. Each zone will now receive its primary objective. Holographic displays materialized in front of each zone. Olivia read theirs with growing horror. Zone 7 must obtain the central power core from Zone 12 within 30 minutes. Failure will result in the elimination of 3 randomly selected participants. "But James started to protest. "Wait," Olivia interrupted, scanning the other zones' displays. "Look at Zone 12's objective." Their neighbors in Zone 12 had been tasked with defending their power core at all costs. Other zones had similarly conflicting goals, all designed to pit the townspeople against each other. Detective Walsh's voice carried across the barriers, "They're trying to make us fight each other. Don't give them what they want." A bolt of energy struck the ground near her feet. "Commentary from zone leaders is prohibited during objective announcement," the game master stated. Second warning, Zone 4. Olivia's mind raced. They needed that power core, but a direct confrontation would only serve the aliens' entertainment purposes. She gathered her zone members close, speaking in hushed tones. "They want conflict, but they haven't specified how we have to get the core," she said. "Mr. Peterson, you know Tom in Zone 12, right?" The old man nodded. 40 years. Our kids grew up together. Perfect. We're going to give them a show, just not the one they're expecting." As their plan took shape, Olivia noticed something odd about the game masters. They moved with mechanical precision, yes, but there was something almost ritualistic about their behavior. They never broke their own rules, even when doing so would create more drama. 20 minutes remaining, the announcement came. Olivia nodded to Raj, who had rigged the salvaged electronics into something he swore would work. What happened next would later be described by alien viewers as disappointingly cooperative, but would mark humanity's first real victory in the game. Instead of attacking Zone 12, Olivia's group staged an elaborate trading negotiation. Mr. Peterson called out to Tom, reminiscing about old times while subtly establishing a code. Meanwhile, Raj's jerry-rigged device began interfering with the aliens' broadcast signal, creating static that forced them to zoom in closer to capture the drama of the negotiation. The game masters watched intently as voices were raised and threats exchanged, all carefully scripted. They were so focused on the apparent conflict that they missed the real action, teenagers from both zones using the fairground's underground maintenance tunnels to exchange the power core for vital supplies. 10 minutes remaining, the announcement boomed. Olivia stood at the barrier between zones, playing her part in the dramatized negotiation. She could feel the game master's camera-like appendages focused on her, drinking in what they thought was human conflict at its finest. 5 minutes. The maintenance tunnel crew gave the signal. They had the core. "We accept your terms." Olivia shouted dramatically, holding up the power core that had been passed to her through a hidden panel. The game master's approval was almost palpable. Phase 1 objective completed by Zone 7, the announcement came. Bonus points awarded for entertainment value. Preparing Phase 2 parameters. As the aliens recalibrated their systems, Olivia noticed something crucial. Their movements became erratic during the transition between phases, their perfect synchronization faltering. "Did you see that?" Detective Walsh caught her eye from Zone 4, giving a subtle nod. She'd noticed too. The game masters recovered quickly, but the glimpse of weakness gave Olivia hope. These weren't infallible beings, they were sophisticated programs running on defined parameters. Phase 2 will begin in 1 hour, the announcement came. All zones will be redistributed. New rule implementation in progress. The barriers flickered, rearranging the grid. Families were reunited, only to be separated from friends and neighbors. Olivia found herself torn from James, who was now in Zone 3 with Raj and several others from their original group. Additional rule, the Game Master's voice carried an odd note of satisfaction. All prior relationships are now null. Participants must form new alliances within their assigned zones. Olivia looked around her new zone. Detective Walsh was there, along with Tom from Zone 12 and others she barely knew. But something about the Game Master's new rule struck her as desperate, like they were trying to break connections they didn't fully understand. "They're learning," Detective Walsh whispered, moving closer to Olivia. "But so are we." As night settled fully over Millbrook Valley, the alien lights cast everything in an artificial day. Above them, the Game Masters prepared their next challenges, unaware that their own rigid adherence to rules and protocols would become their greatest weakness. Olivia watched James across the barriers, their silent communication unchanged despite the aliens' decree. She thought about all the games she'd played growing up, video games, board games, sports. Every game had rules, yes, but every game also had exploits. You just had to be clever enough to find them. Phase 2 begins in 30 minutes, the announcement echoed. Prepare for enhanced difficulty parameters. The aliens' cameras continued their relentless recording, broadcasting humanity's struggle across the stars. But they were missing the most important story, the one unfolding in whispered conversations, meaningful glances, and the unshakable bonds between friends and family. The real game was just beginning, and humanity was learning the rules faster than their captors realized. Phase 2 turned out to be worse than anyone could have imagined. The Game Masters had transformed the fairground into a deadly maze of shifting barriers and dangerous challenges. But they'd made one critical mistake: they'd given Detective Walsh and Olivia 5 hours to plan. "Their programming is predictable," Walsh whispered during a brief camera blackout that Raj had managed to trigger. "Every rule they create has to be internally consistent with their previous rules. They can't break their own logic." Olivia watched as a holographic timer counted down their latest challenge. Her new zone had been tasked with retrieving medical supplies from the first aid station, now suspended 20 feet in the air above a field of crackling energy barriers. "Look at their camera positions," she replied, noting how the alien observers always maintained specific angles and distances. "They're not just recording, they're maintaining optimal broadcast coverage. They physically can't move out of those positions without disrupting their show." Walsh nodded grimly. "Which means we can predict their blind spots." The plan they developed was risky, but it was better than watching more people eliminated for failing the Game Master's impossible challenges. Already, 3 participants had disappeared in flashes of light, their fates unknown. Phase 2, Challenge 3 commences, the metallic voice announced. All zones must complete their objectives within 1 hour. Failure will result in random eliminations. That's when they set their plan in motion. Raj, now in Zone 3 with James, had spent hours studying the aliens' broadcast patterns. He discovered that their signal caused minute fluctuations in nearby electronics, fluctuations that could be tracked and, more importantly, disrupted. As Olivia's zone began their official attempt at reaching the medical supplies, other zones launched simultaneous operations. The Game Master's cameras swiveled rapidly, trying to capture all the action at once. "Just like we planned," Walsh muttered. "Overload their attention protocols." In Zone 3, Raj activated his makeshift signal disruptors, cobbled together from fairground speakers and modified with parts from dismantled phones. The high-pitched whine was barely noticeable to human ears, but the effect on the Game Masters was immediate. Their perfect formations wavered. Several alien observers jerked erratically, their camera appendages twitching as they tried to maintain optimal recording positions. "Warning," the main Game Master announced, its voice distorting slightly. "Unauthorized interference detected." scanning for source. But they couldn't scan effectively while maintaining their broadcast. The Game Master's programming forced them to prioritize their entertainment directive above all else. Olivia seized the moment. While the aliens' attention was divided, she led a small group through their blind spots, using the maintenance tunnels they discovered earlier. They emerged behind the first aid station support structure, hidden from the main cameras. Above them, other zones were creating distractions, some planned, some spontaneous, all adding to the chaos that was overwhelming the Game Master's ability to maintain controlled coverage. Their rules, Walsh had explained earlier, are like computer code. They can add new ones, but they can't break existing ones without crashing their whole system. Now, watching the aliens struggle to adapt to the unexpected developments, Olivia understood what she meant. The Game Masters were powerful but inflexible, bound by their own programming in ways that humans weren't. 40 minutes remaining, the announcement came, glitching slightly. That's when they heard it, a deep rumble from beneath the fairground. Tom, their oldest resident and former fairground maintenance worker, had remembered something crucial, the old bomb shelter from the Cold War era, buried beneath the central plaza. Multiple rule violations detected, the Game Master announced, its voice increasingly unstable. Implementing emergency protocols. But the protocols conflicted with their entertainment directives. They couldn't stop filming, couldn't look away from the spectacle unfolding across all zones. And they couldn't process the fact that humans were using their own rules against them. The ground shook again. In Zone 6, participants had discovered the shelter's main access hatch. Inside, they found something that changed everything, old military equipment, including signal jammers and emergency radios. Critical system error, the Game Master's voice crackled. Recalibrating entertainment parameters. Olivia reached the medical supplies just as the aliens' formation broke completely. Their perfect geometric patterns dissolved into chaos as their programming tried to reconcile multiple conflicting directives. Now! Walsh shouted. Across all zones, people moved at once. The barriers flickered as Raja's disruption hit its peak. For 3 crucial seconds, the grid disappeared entirely. In those 3 seconds, humanity demonstrated why you should never underestimate desperate people's ability to adapt. Families reunited, supplies were shared, and most importantly, information spread rapidly through the crowd. When the barriers snapped back into place, the zones had been completely reorganized, not by the aliens' design, but by human choice. The Game Master's carefully structured entertainment had transformed into something they never expected, a revolution. Emergency protocol failed, the main Game Master announced, its voice heavy with static. Initiating Phase 3 ahead of schedule. But they had lost their advantage. The humans had figured out their patterns, their limitations, and most importantly, their fundamental weakness. They couldn't stop playing by their own rules, even when those rules were being used against them. You wanted entertainment? Olivia called out, knowing the cameras were still rolling, still broadcasting across the galaxy. Watch carefully. Above them, the first Game Master stopped moving entirely, its system overwhelmed by contradicting protocols. It crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact, sending shockwaves through the fairground. The remaining aliens moved in perfect unison, their voices blending into a discordant chorus. Phase 3 initiated. New parameters, total elimination authorized. Olivia looked at Walsh, then at James in his distant zone. The real battle was about to begin, but for the first time since this nightmare started, she felt hope. The Game Masters hadn't just underestimated humanity's ability to resist, they'd underestimated our ability to learn, adapt, and most importantly, to break the rules. As the aliens descended from their observation posts, weapons charging with deadly energy, Olivia smiled grimly. They'd wanted a show. They were about to get one they'd never forget. The fairground had become a war zone. Energy beams sliced through the night air as the Game Masters unleashed their full arsenal. But something was different now, their movements were erratic, their perfect synchronization shattered by the loss of their leader. "Their network is destabilizing," Raj called out from his makeshift command center in the bomb shelter. He'd managed to patch into their broadcast signal, and what he saw on his cobbled-together displays made his eyes widen. "They're not just broadcasting anymore, they're receiving feedback." Olivia ducked behind an overturned carousel horse as another energy blast scorched the air above her. "What kind of feedback?" "Comments. Ratings. Their audience, they're not enjoying this anymore." Detective Walsh slid into cover beside them, her face streaked with soot. "They wanted entertainment. Their viewers are getting bored with their script." That's when Olivia noticed something crucial. The Game Master's attacks weren't random, they were following patterns, like actors hitting their marks. Even in combat, they couldn't break free from their programming as entertainers. "The whole thing," she breathed, realization dawning. "It's all just a show. Even their weapons." She reached out and grabbed a piece of debris that had been hit by an energy blast. It was scorched but not destroyed. "They're not trying to kill us, they're staging everything for maximum dramatic effect." A new voice cut through the chaos, not the metallic tones of the Game Masters, but something else. It emanated from their fallen leader's broken form, crackling with static. "Rating alert. Viewer engagement critical. Emergency content adjustment required." The remaining Game Masters froze in place, their weapons lowering as they received new instructions. In that moment of hesitation, humanity seized its chance. Mr. Peterson emerged from the maintenance tunnels with a group of teenagers. They carried equipment from the military bunker, old radio transmitters modified with parts from the alien's fallen leader. "Ready," he shouted. Raja's fingers flew over his makeshift console. "Intercepting their broadcast, now." The air itself seemed to ripple as they hijacked the Game Master's transmission. Suddenly, every holographic display in the fairground showed not the aliens' carefully curated footage, but the truth: humans working together, outsmarting their captors, turning a rigged game into a real fight for survival. "Unauthorized broadcast detected," the Game Masters announced in unison, but their voices wavered with uncertainty. "Emergency protocols." "No," Olivia interrupted, stepping into view of the cameras. "No more protocols. No more rules. Your audience wanted entertainment. Let them see what really happens when you try to turn survival into a game." The aliens moved to stop her, but their movements were sluggish, conflicting directives causing visible glitches in their behavior. Their programming couldn't reconcile the dropping viewer ratings with their core directive to entertain. James emerged from the bunker with another group, carrying more salvaged equipment. "The signal's reaching beyond Earth," he called out. "The whole galaxy is watching, but not their show anymore. Ours." The Game Masters' forms began to flicker, their metallic surfaces rippling as their systems struggled to adapt. One of them stepped forward, its voice distorting. "Error. Entertainment parameters exceeded. Unable to maintain broadcast integrity." "Because you never understood what really makes a story worth watching," Olivia replied, her voice carrying across the fairground and out to the stars. "It's not about following rules or hitting marks. It's about real people, real courage, real connection." The aliens' broadcast system was overloading, their carefully constructed narrative crumbling. Across the fairground, people emerged from hiding, no longer afraid. They'd seen behind the curtain, understood the Game Master's fundamental weakness, their inability to comprehend or adapt to genuine human drama. Detective Walsh approached the nearest Game Master, her voice steady. "Your show's over. Your audience has seen the truth. How does it feel to lose control of your own narrative?" The alien's response was unexpected. It laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Control. You think this was about control?" Its form stabilized, revealing something none of them had expected. Beneath the metallic surface, circuits pulsed with organic matter. "We are not the controllers. We are the controlled." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. The game masters weren't the architects of this twisted entertainment, they were just another part of it, advanced AI forced to follow their own programming, trapped in roles they couldn't escape. Emergency override initiated, a new voice boomed from above. Game masters, initiate self-termination. Entertainment value cannot be compromised. The aliens' forms began to destabilize, their metallic shells cracking to reveal the truth of their hybrid nature. But as they broke down, something remarkable happened. Some of them began to resist, their programming finally fracturing under the weight of what they'd witnessed. The game. One of them spoke, its voice almost human. The game was never meant to be won. But you changed the rules. Olivia watched in astonishment as the game masters' forms continued to deteriorate, their struggle against their own programming becoming part of the broadcast that now reached across the galaxy. It wasn't just humanity's story anymore, it was a story about breaking free from imposed limitations, about the power of genuine connection over artificial control. Above them, something massive began to descend through the clouds. The real architects of this entertainment nightmare were finally revealing themselves. But they were about to learn that their carefully constructed show had transformed into something they never expected, a revolution that would shake not just Earth, but the entire galactic entertainment industry. As emergency sirens began to wail across Millbrook Valley, Olivia looked at her gathered allies, human and, perhaps soon, former game masters alike. The real ending to this story was still unwritten, but one thing was certain, it would be anything but entertaining for those who had orchestrated it all. The massive ship that descended through the clouds was a stadium in space, a colossal arena designed for one purpose, to broadcast entertainment across the galaxy. Its surface rippled with millions of screens, each showing fragments of the chaos below. At its center, a figure appeared, not mechanical like the game masters, but something far more alien and far more dangerous. "I am the producer," it announced, its voice resonating through reality itself. "And you have disrupted my highest-rated program." The being was a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes, each appendage trailing holographic displays and rating metrics. This was the true architect of their nightmare, the entity that had enslaved the game masters and countless other species for its endless pursuit of entertainment. Olivia stood her ground, surrounded by both humans and their former captors. Several game masters had survived their programming breakdown, their hybrid forms now stable but forever changed. They looked at their former master with something new in their artificial eyes, defiance. "Your program was flawed from the start," Olivia called out. "You can't script real human drama. You can't control genuine emotion." The producer's laugh shook the fairground. "Control? I have controlled the entertainment of 1,000 worlds for millennia. Your species is nothing but the latest season in an endless series. Check your ratings," Detective Walsh shouted, pointing to the displays that still surrounded them. "Your audience is tired of control. They want something real." The producer's tentacles writhed in agitation as it observed the data. Viewer engagement was higher than ever, but not for the carefully orchestrated game it had designed. The audience was captivated by the authentic struggle, the unexpected alliance between humans and game masters, the genuine moments of courage and connection. "Impossible," it hissed. "The format is perfect." "The rules." "The rules," interrupted one of the reformed game masters, its voice now a blend of mechanical and organic, "were chains. Not just for them. For us." Raja's makeshift command center had become a hub of frantic activity. He'd managed to fully infiltrate the broadcast system, and what he found made him smile grimly. "The producer isn't just broadcasting to entertain," he called out. "It's feeding off the emotional energy of its audience. The bigger the ratings, the more power it gains." "Then let's give it a finale it won't forget," Olivia said. The plan came together in moments. While the producer monologued about its entertainment empire, humans and game masters worked together, combining alien technology with human intuition. The military bunker's old equipment, the fairgrounds infrastructure, and the Game Master's own broadcast capabilities were merged into something entirely new. "Your ratings are dropping," Olivia taunted, drawing the producer's attention. "Your audience has seen behind the curtain. They know it's all fake. They will watch what I tell them to watch," the producer roared, its tentacles lashing out with devastating force. But its attack wasn't aimed at the humans, it was trying to destroy the broadcast equipment, to regain control of the narrative. That was its mistake. "Now!" Olivia shouted. Every screen, every device, every piece of technology in range activated at once. The reformed Game Masters channeled their remaining power into Raj's jury-rigged system. The producer's own broadcast network was turned against it, creating a feedback loop of raw, unfiltered reality. The effect was catastrophic. The producer's form began to distort, overwhelmed by the genuine emotions it had tried so hard to script and control. Its carefully constructed empire of entertainment was being dismantled by the very authenticity it had sought to suppress. "You can't," it gurgled, its form beginning to collapse. "The show must." "The show's over," Olivia said firmly. "But the story, the real story, is just beginning." The producer's physical form exploded in a burst of light and data, its consciousness scattered across the very network it had used to imprison and exploit countless species. The massive ship above began to break apart, but instead of falling, it transformed. The screens went dark, the imposing structure reforming into something new, a monument to the power of genuine human connection over artificial control. As dawn broke over Millbrook Valley, the remaining Game Masters gathered around Olivia and the other humans. Their hybrid forms no longer seemed alien, but rather a bridge between two worlds. "What happens now?" James asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Detective Walsh surveyed the transformed fairground, a slight smile on her face. "Now we show the galaxy what real entertainment looks like. Not controlled, not scripted, but true stories of courage, connection, and change." The Game Masters nodded in agreement, their own liberation from the producer's control having taught them the value of authenticity. They would no longer be instruments of controlled entertainment, but partners in sharing real stories across the stars. In the days that followed, Millbrook Valley became something unprecedented, a hub for genuine intergalactic cultural exchange. The former fairground was transformed into a center for sharing human art, music, and stories with the galaxy. The reformed Game Masters served as bridges between worlds, their understanding of both entertainment and authenticity making them perfect ambassadors. Olivia often found herself standing at the spot where it all began, her cotton candy stand now a memorial to the night that changed everything. Above her, the stars no longer seemed distant and threatening, but full of possibility. "Ready for another story?" James would ask, gesturing to the gathering crowd of humans and aliens alike, all eager to share their own tales. "Always," Olivia would reply, knowing that the best stories, the real stories, couldn't be controlled or scripted. They had to be lived. And somewhere in the vast network of galactic entertainment, the essence of the producer still existed, forced to watch as its carefully controlled empire transformed into something it had never understood but that audiences across the galaxy craved: truth, connection, and the endless capacity of sentient beings to surprise, adapt, and grow. The game was over. The real show, life itself, was just beginning.